What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Lynn of Reckless Logic. Please make sure you guys pop that like button, hit the subscribe button, and please smack that notification bell so do not miss any more posts from me. Let's get straight into this video. So the first thing I will be saying and I will be talking about, you guys can already tell by the title of this video, between TikTok, YouTube videos, tweets, and also some very controversial comments. What I will say is that this situation has most definitely taken a turn, but it's most definitely as well pushed a very important conversation to the forefront. So that's what I really want to get into. So yeah, let me just put my intro up and let's get straight into the tea. What's going on, y'all? Okay, what's going on, y'all? Let me see how's everyone doing. Hey, CJ's daughter, what's going on? Hey, Anya. Oh, hey, Williams. Hey, how you doing? Okay, so now, initially when I was going to do this video in terms of when it first happened, I was going to try to be the first person on it, but I decided to make a decision to sit back, watch, wait, see what people's thoughts were, and then try to proceed on with, what my thoughts. So that's what I decided to do. So the way I'm going to do this breakdown, now keep in mind, this breakdown is not going to be no regular, smegular, normal breakdown. What this is actually going to be, I'm going to break this down to the most basic level, to where, for the most part, if you don't know anything that's going on, you're very much aware and you're able to keep up. And also because I will be bringing in some very much difficult concepts. Like I said, this will not be a normal breakdown. So let's get straight into what actually happened in this situation. So there are some important characters that you need to know in this story. So Jess Hilarious. Jess Hilarious is a Black female comedian from Baltimore. Her work, for me personally, I knew her from Instagram, from making videos, being funny. Some people, her comedy or her comedy style is not for everyone. And also I would say also for me as well, every once in a while she'll make me laugh. But I would personally say that her work and her notoriety blew up ever since she was on Wild and Out. She was doing her own thing before, but once she got on Wild and Out, I would believe, or I think it's quite safe to say, I could be wrong, that a lot of people started to see her more in the limelight. I'm trying to put it in a safe way. Another person that we need to know about is T.S. Madison. T.S. Madison is a Black trans woman, a social media influencer, a media personality, all of the above. If you look up and you click T.S. Madison, it will give you a long history, a long bio of who she is, what she has done. She's also an advocate and also does activist work. I think I worded that right. But yes, that's T.S. Madison. And there's some other characters, but we're going to get into that as time goes on. Of course, you got Tasha K with her scheming peacock ass, and you got some other people. So now what actually happened? So with this specific situation, there was a controversial TikTok video that was taken from TikTok and put onto, I don't know, a different type of medium platform. I don't know. But this snippet of a video where there was a trans woman, and essentially what she was saying is that cis women do not own womanhood, and cis women do not own or gatekeep periods. That was the context of the video. Now, as a result of that video, Jess Hilarious, the someone I just introduced you guys to, she decided to respond to the controversial snippet because she felt a type of way about the way that the video was circulating, and also the way that the video made her feel, and felt like the trans woman was speaking out of bounds. You get what I'm saying? So in Jess Hilarious's response, she said, who's gonna protect bio women or natural born women when are we going to draw the line, and then draw the line between real women and delusions, and when are these delusions going to stop? She kind of went down that whole rabbit hole. Now, as a result, she ended up receiving backlash or criticism from different personalities, the general public as well. Some were standing by her, some were standing on the other side, giving her criticism or opposing her views. You get what I'm saying? So now, so in result of Jess Hilarious's response video that she put on, I want to say it was Instagram, T.S. Madison decided to make a tweet. Now, in this tweet, it was very subtle. It was very laid back. It was very docile in delivery, because T.S. Madison never actually she never actually said Jess Hilarious's name. Now, here's the thing. The context of T.S. Madison's tweet was basically saying that some cis women take issue with trans women because with the existence and presence of trans women, some cis women get mistaken for trans women. And essentially what she was saying is that that's something that you're going to have to figure out within your own self and essentially stop projecting. That's me trying to paraphrase, but we here. Y'all get the message. Now, as a result of that, things just went left. Things just went left because now we got Jess Hilarious. She ended up receiving criticism, very subtle, from T.S. Madison. But in response to T.S. Madison's tweet, Jess Hilarious ended up responding back to T.S. Madison. They were going back and forth on Instagram through stories and through actual posts. Then also, in addition to that, Angelica Ross, who's also a Black trans woman, actress. I want to say she's an actress. Yes, because she was on Pose. So actress decided to speak out and jump into the controversy and give her 2 cents as well. And things just continued to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, Angelica ended up releasing or posting some very public pictures of Jess Hilarious, where she has no edges, and she has a very short ponytail. And so Angelica also posted that in response to her, and when I mean her, Angelica jumping in and speaking out. This is a long breakdown, baby. Jess ended up hitting Angelica Ross in her personal DMs on Instagram, and things just went left after all of that. Now, Hope Giselle, who's another Black trans activist, decided to go live, and she gave her thoughts on the situation about how. Now, I personally feel like it was very balanced. She gave her perspective on the situation, saying that some trans women need to be more careful with their wording in terms of being on platforms and giving out information, especially when you know you're a minority within a minority within a minority within a minority within a minority, and you already know that people are going to weaponize your words, take it out of context. That's basically what she was saying. And she also said and gave a breakdown on the psychology, in addition to T.S. Madison, on the psychology of why they believe, and also myself believe, that Jess Hilarious decided to speak out the way that she did. But we're going to get into that. And also Laverne Cox decided to give her, her breakdown of what her thoughts were, because this situation got really, really out of control and out of hand. Now, after all of that, now we're going to jump over here. Now, over here is where DJ Academics. DJ Academics is a personality. Now, I'm assuming he's a real DJ. I haven't heard him, seen him even do anything in terms of music. I could be wrong or ignorant on his resume. But to my understanding, he is just a personality. He's just a personality on the media outlets. That's essentially what I see him as. I don't know. Now, DJ Academics decided to tweet out and say something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing. Essentially, what he said is that he's shocked about the whole situation that's blowing up between T.S. Madison and also Jess Hilarious, Angelica Ross, and all the other individuals, is because the whole time he thought Jess Hilarious was a trans woman. And I was like, baby. But let's move along. So as a result of that, later on in the situation, as everybody's going back and forth, the girls are reading, the girls are fighting. Tasha Peacock K. Tasha K decided she wanted to speak out in defense of Just Hilarious, but in defense of Just Hilarious, she decided to go after T.S. Madison. But in addition to going after T.S. Madison, she also decided to go after T.S. Madison's mother, calling her, letting her know that allegedly has diabetes, and letting her know that she's fat. That's essentially what she said. And I'm pretty sure some other things that went on, but that's basically what Tasha K had to say. Now, in response to that, now we get into the realm of Tasha K versus T.S. Madison. Now, this situation here got out of hand as well, because you have to think about Tasha K and her tweet. She was tweeting T.S. Madison, and then T.S. Madison ended up making a response video on her YouTube page, dragging the living hell out of Tasha K. Tasha K ended up making a YouTube video responding to T.S. Madison, and what she really did is really say anything, but I digress. And then Tasha K ended up releasing T.S. Madison's expired passport with T.S. Madison's dead name. And what dead names, by the term of dead name, for those who may not be aware, for trans people or people on the gender spectrum, the dead name, what that means is that that's the name that they no longer go by. You get what I'm saying? Once again, trying to make this as level as possible. All right, so yes, so in the midst of T.S. Madison and Tasha K windmilling on each other verbally through these YouTube, Instagram, social media streets, now we have the queer mammy, aka Flame Monroe, decides that he wants to speak out in defense of Just Hilarious. Now, in defense of Just Hilarious, he speaks his piece. Flame speaks his piece, but he decides to take some jabs, of course, at Angelica Ross, and also take some jabs at Hope Giselle. So, with this whole situation, I will say this, that it is out of control. It's very much got really messy. But what I will say is this, is that now with this situation, really you can use this situation as a catalyst, which is what people really have been doing, using this situation as a catalyst of being able to have a much deeper conversation. A woman's conversation in terms of what is womanhood, in terms of what are the terms, what's the meaning of the word cis and transgenderism, in terms of non-binary people, intersex people, gender identity, all of these things. This is going to be and like I said in the beginning, this is a conversation that was very important, but with this specific situation, it has pushed it to the forefront. You get what I'm saying? So with all of that being said, I believe to stay safe, it's safe for me to just think that I think it would be safe for me to define some words, because there will be some terminology that will get used throughout this breakdown. Okay, y'all follow me, y'all stay with me. Like I said, it's gonna be a breakdown. Okay, what's going on, y'all? Now, the first word we have is here. Keep in mind, y'all, I got different things here. I got my tablet over here, I got my phone over here, I got my other notes over here. It's a lot going on, but please make sure you guys thumbs up this video. Keep in mind, y'all, thumbs up really does help out with YouTube's algorithm. The more you guys thumbs up, the more it does help out. Okay. So once again, if we do our job in here, YouTube can finally do their job out there. And when they do their job out there, guess what? People can come here. You get what I'm saying? What's going on, y'all? All right, so the first word I do want to go over in terms of terminology and words that will be used throughout this commentary is the prefix cis. Let me go to it. Now, in terms of cisgender, now the website that I'm using is from glad.org. Now, it says here, we got a stupid sticker. Make sure. Thank you. Want to make sure because my things are acting slow. There we go. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so very much. All right, so let me get done. So yes, the website I will be using is from glad.org. Now it says cisgender. Cisgender, an adjective used to describe people who are not transgender. Cis is a Latin prefix meaning on the same side as, and is therefore an antonym of trans. A cisgender person is a person whose gender identity is aligned with the sex they are assigned at birth. Now, here's the thing. The one of the roadblocks in this conversation here is the distinction between sex, as in your sexual anatomy, and also your gender, which is your gender identity. But we're going to get into that. But let me continue. Now it says here, currently cisgender is a word not widely understood by most people. However, it is commonly used by younger people and transgender people. If you use cisgender in a news article, it is important to define what it means first. That's why I want to make sure I'm doing it here before I give my breakdown. Because, girl, I'm going to take you through highways and byways, okay? Now, important first. Okay, and you can simply say non-transgender people. Cisgender can be shortened to cis, which is CIS. Now it says we recommend only using the shorthand after you have used and defined the word cisgender for your audience. And it says, note, cisgender does not have a hyphen, nor does it need an ED at the end. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye. Okay, so that's for cis. So for those who are not aware, so I'm going to reiterate. Cis essentially means the opposite of trans. If you are not trans, you are cis, CIS. It's not a slur. Now, next word prefix I do want to get into, of course, is trans. Trans, it says here. But it says two things. It says the transgender and also says the trans. So I'm going to read both of those. We'll start with transgender. Transgender, an adjective to describe people whose gender identity differs from the sex. This is the person whose gender identity and sexual anatomy do not align, compared to cis people whose gender identity and sexual anatomy, they align. But for trans people, the gender identity and the sexual anatomy, they do not align. They actually butt heads with each other. You get what I'm saying? Let me see. Okay, yes. Differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. People who are transgender may also use other terms in addition to transgender to describe their gender more specifically. Some of these terms are defined below. Use the terms the persons use to describe here we go. It is important to note that being transgender is not dependent upon physical appearance or medical procedures. A person can call themselves transgender the moment they realize that their gender identity is different than the sex they were assigned at birth. Now, the last tail ending of that excerpt or whatever, it was touching on people who may be transgender versus transsexual. But we're gonna get into that, or at least we think we're gonna get into that, because girl, I don't have it here on his notes, but I think we just might get into it. Just give you guys a heads up. All right, now we're gonna get into trans. So we got over transgender. Now we're getting into trans. Trans, used as a shorthand for transgender and on second reference after you first using the word transgender. If you use trans without defining it or without the first reference of transgender, mainstream audiences may not understand its meaning or what you are referencing. Okay, so we got cis out the way. We got trans and transgender out the way. Now let's see what's the next thing we got to get over here, girl. Because I'm taking it slow. It's gonna be a slow one over here, okay? Because I see from the conversations a lot of people are confused and they're not well versed in these conversations. It's quite obvious. And also some other things that's also entwined with that, but I'm gonna get into that a little bit later. I already know about that. All right, so now we have transphobia. Let's get into transphobia. Where's bad boy at? Let me see. Where you at? Okay, in the meantime, while I find the word transphobia, y'all make sure you guys thumbs up this video, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Thumbing up really does help out with YouTube's algorithm. What is bad boy at? Let me see. Let me just go. I'll just go to the internet. That's what we're gonna do. Thumbing up, thumbing up. Let me see. So transphobia. Now, this is a word that's commonly used, but a lot of people don't understand its meaning. For the surface level, they do understand its meaning, but however, in terms of situations to where these power systems, these oppressive systems are executed on a subtle level. On an extreme level, people understand the meaning of transphobia. But on a subtle level, which is very, 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 very laid back in delivery, it's hard for people to detect. But it's all right. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help. I'm here to help y'all. Now it says here, transphobia. Transphobia consists of negative attitudes, feelings, and or actions towards transgender people or transness in general. Transphobia can include fear, aversion. That's a key word, but what does aversion mean? Let's get into that. Aversion. It says here. So essentially what it means is to go against. That's essentially what it is. I'm just summing it up for y'all. Now it says transphobia can include fear, aversion, hatred, violence, or anger towards people who do not conform to social gender expectations. That's a key one. There's another word here called transmisia. I know some of y'all like, what the hell is a transmisia? What the hell are we talking about? Don't worry, I got you. I'm here for you guys. Transmisia. Transmisia. Now the website that I am using for transmisia is called translanguageprimer.com. It says here, transmisia. In attempt to replace the term transphobia, this is in order to avoid the connotation of fear associated with the phobia suffix. Now, for those who may or may not be aware, one of the roadblocks in these conversations is the full understanding of transphobia, the full understanding of how transphobia shows up on an explicit and also on a very subtle level, on a macro level and also on a micro level, in terms of delivery and also in terms of social environments and dynamics. Now, that's what the first part of that excerpt is referring to, because a lot of times when you talk to people who may have difference of opinions, who may not agree with transgenderism and trans people or what they do with their own lives, one of the main rebuttals that usually come up is that I'm not afraid of transgender people. I don't fear transgender people, because a lot of times when people think of fear, they think of actually scared in terms of fearing for my life and also fearing for my actual physical safety, as in I might get beat up. That's what people think of when they think of fear on a surface level. But fear actually goes much deeper than what people try to make it seem like in these conversations. You get what I'm saying? But let me continue. So transmisia, I'm gonna read from the beginning. In an attempt to replace the term transphobia, this is in order to avoid the connotation of fear associated with the phobia suffix. This is a better deflect statements like, I'm not afraid of trans people. And I just referred to that. And it also says this, I just think they are, and it says insert negative concept here. What that was, it were examples of what I just referenced. These were examples of people in their rebuttals, what that typically happens. Now I'm gonna continue. It says the suffix mistia means hatred and is the opposite of the suffix philia. Unfortunately, the suffix mistia is often co-opted by facet groups. So many people stay away from using the term due to the association. It also suffers from a lack of immediate recognition due to this immediate recognition, as transphobia is easily deciphered by people who have heard about homophobia. So this is the term that's as a way to deflect from people who are transphobic, that do perform transphobia, do execute transphobia, but however, they they don't recognize it as transphobia, or at least don't want to recognize it as transphobic, because they're not actually scared physically of trans people, and also they're not scared that trans people are going to, quote unquote, going to take their life. You get what I'm saying? And also the thing with this term is that it's not widely recognized. So a lot of people like transmisia. What is that compared to transphobia? All righty. Okay, so let's continue, y'all. This gonna be it's gonna be a slow roast. Now, here we go. Now we're gonna go back. What is bad boy at? Bam, right here. Now we got transgender. I already read. Now we have transsexual. Bam, here we go. Oh, I done lost my spot. Okay, there we go. Transsexual. Now it says here, this is an adjective. An older term that originated in the medical and psychological communities as the gay and lesbian community rejected homosexual and replaced it with gay and lesbian. The transgender community rejected transsexual and replaced it with transgender. Some people within the trans community may still call themselves transsexuals. Do not use transsexual to describe a person unless it is a word they use to describe themselves. If the subject of the news article uses the word transsexual to describe themselves, use it as an adjective. And it says IE, this is the example, but really EX. It says transsexual woman or transsexual man. So from this source over here from GLAAD, they're saying that previously in the past, transsexual was the more accepted term back in the day. But however, since transgender people did not like that term collectively, they replaced it with transgender. Now, I do want to say this. There is a distinction between pre-op transgenders and also post-op transgenders. Pre-op means that is before the surgery. Before the SRS, which is the sex reassignment surgery. Post-op means that's after the SRS, the sex reassignment surgery. Now, here's the thing when it comes down to transgenderism. It's up to the individual who is transitioning to decide whether or not they want to actually go through with said surgery. Some transgender people don't feel it's necessary for them to be able to go all the way through with these with the SRS, because that may not be in their plan in order for them to be able to fully embrace their transgenderism. On the flip side, some transgender people do go through with the SRS, which is the sex reassignment surgery, so they can fully embrace their this transgenderism in their journey. You get what I'm saying? So I'm trying to break all this down because, baby, when I get into my zone, it's gonna be I'm gonna need for y'all to keep up. Okay, I need for y'all to keep up. Now, next thing that we have is non-binary. Let me see, can I find this bad boy? Where is bad boy? Okay, non-binary people. Non-binary people, they fall under the category of gender, not sexuality. Non-binary is an adjective used by people who experience their gender identity and or gender expression as falling outside of the binary gender categories of man and woman. So binary essentially means two, bi. And with those two, it's usually the two extremes. Man, woman. Okay? Okay, it says many binary people also call themselves transgender and consider themselves part of the transgender community. Others do not. Now, here's the thing. Now, this is something that I've heard from other transgender people and all the other non-binary people, because I actually know somebody that's non-binary, is that some transgender people, or there are people within the trans community that do not like it when non-binary people call themselves transgender or consider themselves part of the transgender community, because sometimes both parties and their views can sometimes conflict. You get what I'm saying? That's what I've heard personally. Not all trans people, not all non-binary people. Let me see. Okay, others do not. It says non-binary is an umbrella term that encompasses many different ways to understand one gender. So non-binary is also an umbrella term. Got you. Gender. It says some non-binary people may also use words like agender, bigender, demigender, pangender, etc. to describe the specific way in which they are non-binary. Now it says here, always ask people what words they use to describe themselves. Non-binary is sometimes shortened to bi. Oh, girl. Hold on, girl. I'm over messing up these words. Oh, I don't know if that's like a typo or whatever, but MBY, ENBY. I'm assuming y'all know what that is. I don't know, but I'm going to continue. Now it says here, do not use non-binary as, okay. So it's starting to shorten the word. Okay. Do not use NB as that is often shorthand for non-black. Non-binary may also be written as non-binary. Okay, it says both forms are commonly used within the community and both are acceptable. Okay, so now it's making sense to what's going on. So in this excerpt, it's saying that in a way to be able to, in writing, shorten the terminology non-binary, you would put a lowercase e, a lowercase n, a lowercase b, and a lowercase y. That's basically what I got. All right, so now after non-binary, you also have gender non-conforming. This is the last terminology. I'm gonna go to like a little spiel about it, and then we're gonna continue. Okay, slow roast. Gender non-conforming, a term. Hold on, make sure my lips look okay, girl, because this shit starting to dry my face. We're good. Gender non-conforming, a term used to describe people whose gender expression differs from conventional expectation of masculinity and femininity. Now it says here, and now this part right here is in bold. Please note that many cisgender people have gender expressions that are gender non-conforming. Simply having a non-conforming gender expression does not make someone trans or non-binary. And I'm going to continue. Now, what I just read was in bold. Now, what I'm about to read is not in bold anymore. Gotcha. It says here, and I continue. Nor are all transgender people gender non-conforming. Many transgender people have gender expressions that are conventionally masculine or feminine. So essentially what I'm getting from this is me trying to paraphrase, make it make sense to me. What I'm getting from this would be when you see people who may showcase their masculinity and femininity and express those things in a non-conventional way and in a unique way. I'll put it that way. Okay, now I'm gonna continue. It says, do not describe someone as gender non-conforming simply because they happen to be a transgender person. All right. So that was the terminology. Now, let's get into what we're here for, okay? But before we do all that, let's do like a little bit of a chapstick break because I can feel my lips going crazy over here, y'all. I will say this. Keep in mind, there is a method to the madness, okay? There's a reason why I do a little bit of information and then I do like a little break or whatever, because our psychology, our minds, I know for some people, this is a lot of information for people to digest, but the way that we understand information is in chunks, okay? So I have to be able to break this stuff up so y'all can be able to understand it for those who really want the knowledge and education. So let's continue back into the knowledge and education. So now let's actually get into the commentary at this point. Let me just get a little bit serious. Let me just bring it together. What's going on, y'all? First thing I do want to say, in terms of the TikTok video where the transgender person was saying that cis women do not own and cannot gatekeep womanhood and also do not own or gatekeep periods. what that transgender person said was the truth. Now, I understand if you're not aware of all of the information and current education that's surrounding gender identity, then of course from the surface of, or from what you know, it looks like, wait, what? People are confused. You know, this whole time I'm over here talking, I did not have my banner up. Bam. This whole time I'm talking to y'all, I didn't have my banner up, but it's all right. We're going to get through it. So yes, what that transgender person said in the video was not wrong. It was actually right. What people failed to realize is that transgender was some. Well, people failed to realize that what the transgender person was doing, they were speaking very inclusive, because trans women are also part of womanhood. They also are part of the woman umbrella. And so with the woman umbrella, there are different types of women. You have trans women, you have cis women, you have Black cis women that may be from America. Because here's the thing, the word cis is not a slur. It actually affirms and validates your experiences, because both trans women and cis women both fall under the woman umbrella. So they need those prefixes to make a distinction, and also at the same time validate each person's experience. Because with you being a cis woman, you may have, you are going to have different experiences in terms of your body compared to a trans woman or trans person who's going to have different experiences and different experiences in terms of their body, and I'm gonna say even both of them in their psychologies. You get what I'm saying? So let's just get, it's gonna be a slow one. Now, in terms of the periods, what the transgender person said in the TikTok video was referring to the fact that not only do cis women have periods, you also have to keep in mind trans men also have periods. You also have to keep in mind that intersex people do exist and they also have periods. You also have to keep in mind that non-binary people do exist and have periods. Now, this is the reason why this conversation starts to go like this and things are all crazy, is because people a lot of times don't make the distinction between your sex, which is your sexual anatomy, and also your gender identity. So with your sex or your sexual anatomy, that is referring to the sexual reproductive organs associated on your body, which would be male or female or intersex, which means that they were born with both parts. Which, if you, and now that I think about it, because I actually didn't write this in my notes, so let me say it now. Even in nature, it shows you that there is also an in-between. You have the male, then you have the female, then you have the intersex person that's in between. So it was something that Funky Dineva said that was very powerful. I'm about to paraphrase, my memory girl. Whenever you have a strong binary, you're always going to have everything in between. Whenever you have a black and whenever you have a white, for example purposes, you're always going to have different shades of gray in between, aka 50 shades of gray. Every time there's a strong binary on anything, there's always going to be variations in between, because just about most of anything are not on those strong binaries. But we're gonna get into that. Just like I said, a slow roast. But let me get back to the gender identity and sexual anatomy. The sexual anatomy, that's the reproductive organs associated on your body. The gender identity, That is the social construct and or the different states of consciousness. Here. Now, the way that the gender identity is expressed, because here's the thing, people always talk about the gender identity in terms of the external, the way that it's showcased. But people never really talk about the gender identity below the surface. So the gender identity below the surface is referring to the states of consciousness, which is here. And with the states of consciousness, and actually with consciousness in general, anything for the most part that comes from here does manifest into reality. That's the reason why we may have people who may have ideas about certain inventions, but it came from the mind of a person to be able to try to manifest it into reality. i.e., you have people that thought about, we have a whole bunch of cars in the road and we're driving. What is a really neat way for us to be able to come up with a system so people know when to drive and when to stop? And that manifestation of that thing, of those ideas, would be the stoplight. Or you have other people that think, what's a very creative way for people to communicate more effectively and talk to people from long distances? That was an idea and within the consciousness, which, I'm going slow, y'all, which manifested into reality as in a cell phone or a telephone. So we have the states of consciousness, which is inside the head, but then you also have the gender expression, which is expressed and manifested into reality, into this spectrum, into this frequency. So you have the sexual anatomy, which is the reproductive organs, male or female. Then you have the gender identity, which is man or woman, which is the social construct, which means the way that you act, the way that you may behave, the way that you may walk through life, the way that you may identify yourself, the way that you may dress. That is what that's referring to. Now, I'm going to use an example. I'm trying to use more analogies in my breakdown to try to get people, get people going, In terms of man and woman, for cis people, a lot of times, because I am cis as well, even though I may be queer, which is an umbrella term for the community, because you have the sexuality and you also have the gender identity. Two separate things. I may be gay, but I am not trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming. So you have the sexual anatomy, male and female, which are the organs, reproductive organs associated on one's body. This is the reason why, even when you look through nature, you see male goats, female goats, male lions, female lions, male. Shut up. My friend over here asleep. You have male llamas, female lions. That's what we're referring to, the organs associated on the body. Now, the gender identity is that it's the way that you operate, the way that you move through life. And I think a lot of times that when it comes down to cis people, they don't really make the distinction because for us, we had the luxury and the privilege of not thinking of the two as two separate entities. You get what I'm saying? Or two separate concepts. It's like, okay, I'm male, I'm just going to be a man. Yeah, I may be gay, but I'm still a man. That's not the same situation in terms of transgender people or non-binary people. intersex people as well, etc. You get what I'm saying? So, girl, we're gonna go slow. It's gonna be a slow roast. It's gonna be a slow roast. Let me see. Let me see. Where this bad boy at? What I lost my. Yes. So, womanhood also belongs to cis women, trans women, because trans women are also part of that. And then you have periods in terms of everybody else. Trans men, non-binary people, gender non-conforming, cis women. And also with those statements, in terms of just hilarious, is that what she doesn't realize is that there are cis women who don't have periods. Yes, we understand this may not be for every cis woman, but there are cis women who do not have periods, but yet they are still women. And so a lot of times too, people say things along the lines of back in the day, we just used women. Back in the day, we used this. Back in the day, we used to say that. But I need for people to also understand that back in the day, we did not understand, did not validate, affirm the existence of trans people, non-binary people, and gender non-conforming individuals. So the language that's actually present today is taking in account of all of the other experiences and nuances in gender identity. All right, so let me continue. It's going to be a slow roast. Now, in terms of Just Hilarious' response, I believe, this is me speaking, I believe it was a trauma response. It was a trauma response, and also with her response, I do believe, well, I'm not going to say I do believe, she was sending out dog whistles, and she had a whole bunch, she had undertones in her speech. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, when I say that, I mean this. The dog whistles, in terms of, for those who may or may not be aware, once again, I'm going to make this the most basic level so you can understand everything I'm saying. We here. Dog whistles are, if you ever had a dog whistle, this is a whistle that if you were to blow it, the human ear cannot pick up on that frequency to hear it with the human ear. But with dogs in their ears, they can hear that whistle clearly. So take that same example and implement that example within language to where you may say something and use certain type of language on a topic. And for those who may not be aware or well versed in said conversations, topic, or subject, may not hear it, they may not hear or be aware of what a person may try to do, activate, or what they're really saying. But we're going to get into that. Now, the reason why I'm saying that what Just Hilarious did, her response was a trauma response, is because, of course, as everybody knows, if you're not aware, let me catch you up. As everybody knows, for one, actually, no, before we get into that, let me say this. The trauma response was her using, not trauma response, the dog whistles and undertones were this. And I quoted it. Who's gonna protect us? And what she was doing in that moment was a dog whistle because here's the thing, in terms of the queer community and also in terms of the female community, keep in mind, I'm using this term female, not in a way to demean women, cis women, but I'm using the term female as a way to make a clear distinction in these conversations around gender identity, because if I keep saying woman, it's going to eventually get all messed up, girl. So cis women and the queer community have always been it seems like it's always been more of a friendship, more of a camaraderie, more of I'm going to use it for the extreme from the outside looking in for what men tell us. cis hetero men tell us is that it seems to be more of an alliance. So if the cis women, black women specifically, and black queer people have always been like this, comparatively speaking to the black man, who essentially don't really, for the most part, collectively, there's always exceptions to the rule, collectively do not really mess with queer people like that. And before I even continue, let me say it like this. Once again, it's gonna be a slow roast. What I mean by that is this: is that yes, there are some cis hetero black men. We have a melanated context. Melanated men who do have friends, do have family members, do enjoy the presence, existence of melanated queer people individually, but collectively as a group, majority of melanated men do not mess with black queer people. Now, since we know that black cis women and also black queer people were like this, comparatively speaking to queer people and black men, cis hetero men, melanated men, then Jess Hilarious, who is a cis black woman, saying, who's going to protect us from this group over here, queer people, melanated, trans individuals, or non-binary, etc. people, who's going to protect us from this group over here? And we know that the psychology of the melanated man, cis hetero man, is to do what? Protect and provide. Especially when typically the heterosexual cis man do not mess with the queer person like that. So she knew what she was doing. Who's going to protect us? Don't worry. I will get into who's going to protect you just a little bit later, but let's continue. Who's going to protect us is what she said. And she also used dog whistles along the lines of saying delusions in terms of transgender people, non-binary people, all different types of people who don't fit the conventional ways of gender. And that is something, and that is a trigger word that gets used a lot in terms of transgender, non-binary people, etc. People who don't show up in the regular traditional way in terms of their expression and the way that they operate. And so that's triggering language, and she knows what she was doing when she said delusions. And then she also said this: we birth y'all. What that is a dog whistle to a subset of melanated, well, I'm going to say melanated because, girl, I'm having a melanated context, but cis women who always use them birthing people. See the best way I can put this. They always use them birthing people as a rebuttal, especially when there seems to be some sort of tension or disagreement between queer people and also cis black women, because we also know misogyny exists on the queer side, and we also on the cis woman side, but we also know homophobia and transphobia and self-hate also still exists on both ends in both of those groups as well. So at times there is a disagreement and tension. So Jess Hilarious knew what she was saying and knew what she was doing by who's going to protect us, and using the word delusions in connection with people who don't show up the same way as quote unquote cis people. We birth y'all. Those are dog whistles to activate the MK Ultra, the transphobic, queerphobic MK Ultra within the hearts of people. That's essentially what she was doing. But it's going to be a slow roast. Let's continue. The reason why I'm saying that Just Hilarious response was a trauma response, I'm gonna say it like this. Of course, everybody knows because I've seen everybody else commentary. So this is not your first commentary seeing this, so you already know what it is. Just Hilarious, there is a clip of Just Hilarious circulating where she was on Do Not Call Me White Girl's podcast. I do love the podcast. I do love her. It's funny. But on that podcast, Do Not Call Me White Girl asked Just Hilarious about her experiences or whatever. I kind of forgot what the example of the question was or whatever. But Just Hilarious did actually open her mouth and actually say that there was a rapper, a popular rapper, famous rapper, that a mistaken her for a trans woman and was willing to pay her, fly her out, etc., to have sexual intercourse with him. I'm just gonna leave it there. Those came from Just Hilarious words that came out of her mouth. So another clip that was circulating, and I think this was because, of course, the drama between Just Hilarious and T.S. Madison and all of that other stuff, craziness going on, Tasha K jumping her, herself in it or whatever, and then Angelica Ross, all that stuff was going on. I think for me on YouTube, my algorithm was algorithming. Okay. So there was a clip from Wild 'N Out. Now, for those who may or may not know, Wild 'N Out is a family show. Well, it's supposed to be a family show where it's improv. This is Nick Cannon's show. Nick Cannon is the baby father of Mariah Carey, and also he's an actor. Nick Cannon, also apparently he does rap, but girl, he's an actor. On this show, you have two teams. Now, originally it was the red team and the black team, but eventually he just started changing up the teams, platinum team, black team, etc., all the other stuff. But there was a clip for where this episode was actually bringing in guest DC Young Fly, who is a melanated comedian, and Danny Lee, and a social influencer. Danny Lee was on the red squad. DC Young Fly was on the black squad. They were playing a game called Talking Spit. Now, if you have never watched the show, Talking Spit is essentially where the two guests, or whoever the guest stars are, will sit in front of each other with two chairs, both facing each other. They're going to have water in their mouth, and after they have water in their mouth, the objective of the game is for the opposing team to make the other team's spokesperson, guest, spit out water because they're laughing or embarrassed, etc. But the goal is to make them spit. Now, I said all of that to give you guys a pretty picture. But the reason why I'm even bringing this situation or this clip up is because I'm actually looking at the psychology from Just Hilarious. So Just Hilarious is actually on the red squad. While she's on the red squad, her objective is to make DC Young Fly laugh. So one of the occurring themes is that they make jokes about Just Hilarious's appearance. Now, with that is that Just Hilarious, it was time for her to come up and try to make DC Young Fly laugh. So what Just Hilarious decided to do, she decided to get in front of DC Young Fly with her butt facing DC Young Fly, and she bent over starting to twerk. And what she said was, she said, DC Young Fly, they always say we look like each other. I know that you never pictured yourself or imagined yourself twerking at yourself. Now, here's the thing. Jokes, of course, are a way to bring laughter, bring happiness, relieve pain, distract, deflect from certain things that we may have going on. Comedy is also a very wonderful healing tool. But also with comedy, it's also a way to decipher one's psychology. So They always, like Moesha said, they call Jess a man on every other episode. But then not only that, she's on an episode referring to how her and DC Young Fly look alike because Jess may perceive she may have masculine looking features. And the reason why I said that is to say this, because now this leads me into Tasha, not Tasha K, T.S. Madison. Okay, make sure you see this what I mean. There you go. Oh, girl. That's the thing about having this lip balm. Maybe drying up on your lips once again, y'all. Y'all make sure y'all thumbs up this video. Let's get into T.S. Madison and her tweet. T.S. Madison. T.S. Madison made a tweet basically saying, like I said before, like I said earlier, some cis women have a frustration because cis women do get mistaken for trans women. That was the observation that T.S. Madison came up with. And I do agree with that observation because I do watch Wild 'N Out, and every other episode they call him just a man. And then when that clip was circulating, which I seen a while back, of where a man thought that Just Hilarious was a transgender woman, even though she tried to laugh it off, I can tell that she was irritated by it. Now, I do want to get into this as well. Let's talk about, let me see, can I find this bad boy? No, I'm gonna wait on that part. But like I said, it's a slow road. Let's actually speak on the topic of how transphobia actually does affect cis women as well. It's gonna be a slow one. Transphobia. The thing with the system of transphobia, it operates on the strong binary, which are the strong polarities. The strong polarities here in the West, where women are assigned hyperfemininity and solely femininity, and men are assigned masculinity and hypermasculinity and solely masculinity, where both of these these divine energies are within every single human being. Now, the way that those energies show up and or are showcased may differ from the next person. But we're going to get into it. So with transphobia, it operates on a strong binary of masculinity and femininity, and also with the sexual anatomy. As in, if you are a male and if you are a male in terms of your sexual anatomy, you must identify with the culture of manhood. And if you have female anatomy, you must identify with the culture of womanhood. And it lacks the different shades of nuance of how there are women that naturally showcase masculine energy. There are men who naturally showcase feminine energy. Now, keep in mind, these energies are, of course, energies, but also states of consciousness. And remember, like I said earlier, with these states of consciousness, they may manifest into reality differently. And here in the West, we believe that masculinity and femininity has to do with extremely the way that you look and the way that you present. And that's not always the case, because you also have cis women who showcase masculinity in terms of, before I even get all of that, let me just say it like this. Divine masculinity and divine femininity, I look at it like this. This is me speaking. I look at those divine energies as a way to balance out a human being. Now, it's up to that human being the way that they want to showcase it and express those energies. But What I'm referring to right now is below the surface. I'm not even talking about the external right now. What I'm referring to is that how masculine, divine masculine, has to do with action, taking action, doing. Divine femininity, because girl, that shit she just rolled off my tongue. I probably thought I was speaking Spanish. Femininity has to do with self-actualization. So masculinity has to do with the doing and the external, which is like the body. Divine femininity has to do with the internal, that has to do with the abstract, the mind, the consciousness. That's the reason why, in terms of these energetic, these divine energies, in terms of women, it's also important for women to be in touch with their divine masculine, because sometimes you're going to have to be able to detach from your emotions to do what you have to do. You're going to have to be able to detach from your emotions to kind of sometimes kick that person out of your house that's very much toxic. And it's important for men to be in touch with their divine feminine, not on the expression level, but in terms of the energetic entity within themselves, state of consciousness. Sometimes they're going to have to be in touch to be able to recognize their emotional state, process their emotional state, and also manage their emotions in a way where it's not a detriment to themselves or others. So that's what I mean. So you literally have women who naturally showcase or express masculine energy, and you also have men who naturally showcase and express feminine energy. And with the system of transphobia, it also affects cis women as well. And I said all of that to say this. So let's get into it. With transphobia, it works on a strong binary. And with that strong binary, it lacks the different shades of nuance. Most of everybody, we're literally in the middle. There is no strong, you're on this side or this side. We're literally, a lot of us are in the middle in terms of these energetic forces. So, what I mean by that is this. Now, this one, I'm going to go to my other book. Girl, here we go. So, it's something called a distributive curve. The other name for a distributive curve is called the bell curve. Now, what this is a bell-shaped and symmetric around the mean. So, what is the mean? The mean is the average of a data set. Was an average. The average is the typical or the norm. So the distributive curve is typically used in ways to be able to identify statistics, numbers, information in terms of a population. It looks like a bell. So the highest point would be in the middle. And with the highest point being in the middle, that's what mostly everybody resides in. On one side, that will be the lower level. And on the other side, that would be the exceptional level. But on the ends, that's where mostly people don't, on the ends that most people don't exist on the ends. We mostly exist in the middle. That's the distributive curve. Now, that's in terms of the population and statistics and being able to understand the population in terms of whatever you're going to be talking about. Now, with transphobia, it affects cis women because you have women that have masculine qualities, aka express masculine energy differently than from a different woman that she may be close proximity to, you have women who may have masculine features. Because keep in mind too, you have some women that look like their fathers. It's nothing wrong with that, but that's just the honest to God truth. You have some women some cis women who may have the gender expression and they may look more masculine like, i.e. a tomboy, which has nothing to do with their sexuality. That does not always mean that they're going to be a lesbian, and that does not always mean that they're going to be trans. Ooh, I'm touching the wrong thing. But also with that as well, another part of this conversation, because we're having a melanated context, is that colorism also plays a part as well. And I think that also plays a part in terms of just hilarious. Because she is a darker skinned woman, a darker complected, she has a darker complexion. It's easier for people to deem her as masculine and translate her appearance as masculine, because some of these exact same features are also found on lighter complected people, specifically cis women, but yet they're not deemed as masculine. And vice versa for men, where you may have men that may showcase themselves in more in a feminine light. But let's continue. Yeah, so here's the thing. Patriarchy is the real problem. That's the core of this issue. This is the reason why I call it cream supremacy. Cream supremacy is the reason why we are where we are. Cream supremacy is a philosophy that does what? That's within the conscious. These are the thoughts that you have, the ideas that you believe, and this is what philosophy is. Philosophy also governs your behavior. Patriarchy is the real issue. But let's get into patriarchy and let's see, and I'm going to break it down to its totality of how we got here. Let me see. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to just pause on these notes. Let me go to these over here. So patriarchy, for those who may not be aware. So patriarchy is a system where men hold the power, or the divine masculine holds the power, and women are largely excluded, and or the divine feminine is widely excluded. That's what patriarchy is in terms of the system and philosophy. Well, in this current state, this current time and state, you get what I'm saying? Because I'm gonna say this: there's nothing wrong with patriarchy, but there's something wrong with this version of patriarchy, because patriarchy essentially means the male bloodline. But the reason why this version of patriarchy is toxic is because this version of patriarchy is always trying to dominate queer people and dominate women, cis women. So yes, patriarchy dominates, oppresses, and exploits through the work, through the guise of work, through the guise of the household, through the state, through violence, physical, emotional, or mental or spiritual violence, through cultural institutions, and also through the attitudes to sexuality. Patriarchy characteristics: male domination, or really masculine domination, but male domination, male identification, and male centeredness, and also what I said 2.5 seconds ago, the obsession with control. So here's the thing. Now, this is where we get into, once again, this is a philosophy which can be embedded within the consciousness. And with the philosophy, anybody can eat sleep, breathe, inhale, exhale, a philosophy, a thought processes, and the way that they think. Just because you are a cis woman, that does not mean you are not patriarchal. There is a term for individuals who embrace a system willingly or unwillingly, embrace a system that does nothing but hurt the collective of their subgroup. And what I mean by that is this: within the women's community, that would be considered a mammy. Within the queer community, that would be considered a pick-me, aka I call them the queer mammy. That's what I call them, the queer mammies. Where you have that pick-me syndrome. So when it talks about male identification, it's also talking about how some people may be so male identified, even though they may be female in sexual anatomy. The psychology is male identified to the point that you are embracing a system, reinforcing a toxic system that's toxic to you, people like you, within your subgroup, which would be typically the women's community, or any, really, to be completely honest, is mostly anything that's not cream, part of cream supremacy, would be white, male, Christian, and rich. But let me continue. There are two different sectors in terms of patriarchy. You have the public sector, which refers to, here we go. I'm gonna leave it up there. Here we go. Which you have the public sector, which refers to outside of the home, the household, and then you have the private sector, which refers to being within the home. So the infrastructure and practices of patriarchy historically and also in current day and time. You have the workplace. In terms of the workplace, you would see patriarchal practices be demonstrated through pay, in terms of there is a wage gap between men and women. Cis men, cis women. There is a wage gap, no matter what the race is, in terms of if you stay within the race. Now, in terms of the work environment or the work section, you also see that there is another way of patriarchy being demonstrated would be through positions of power or positions in the workspace, to where you may have women or you may have divine entities, aka queer people, aka women, in an institution within the workspace. So from the naked eye, for people who may not be aware of social dynamics and social problems, social issues, from the naked eye, it comes off like inclusive and diversity. But if you start to scratch the surface and dig a tad bit deeper, you start to realize that that's just an illusion. And I like to use this analogy all the time, to where you have the NFL. Within the NFL, we understand and we know that melanated men, there is a large population of melanated men within the NFL, where they are athletes on teams. But, from the naked eye, it looks as if the NFL is not, it's not part of cream supremacy. The NFL is not exploiting. The NFL is a wonderful place. It's a good thing, X, Y, and Z. But when you start to scratch the surface and pay attention to the positions where melanated or minority groups or whatever group is allowed or restricted or limited to being in, that's when you start to realize the true objective. of said system, i.e., where we look at the population of melanated men being within the NFL and being athletes is at a large rate. But the population of melanated men actually owning football teams to where the real power lies, I'm over hitting this thing left and right, where the real power lies, that's where we start to scratch the surface and start to dig just a tad bit deeper. And what I mean by that is this, by the power lies. It's because, yes, you may be on an athletic team, but keep in mind, you can still lose your job. And keep in mind, you still have to work hard. You are in the NFL section, sector, whatever. You're still a ground. You're still the foot worker. You're still the foot worker. You're the one on the team having to actually make moves. You're the one actually putting your body on the line. Compared to the higher up you go, the more, I'm gonna say, the less physical the less the physical requirement on your body is necessary. Because here's the thing, real leaders, essentially, they're typically not on the forefront, for real. Because protectors protect leaders. Because how can you have the nucleus of an operation, and I'm not right, because right now what I'm doing, I'm speaking military terms. How can you have the leader of an operation on the front lines? Because guess what happens? When that leader is executed or taken out, or something happens to that leader who's the nucleus of said operation, that's the reason why the operation typically would fail, because you no longer have the nucleus. That's the reason why on the chessboard you always protect your queen. But let me continue. The practices of, let me take this down, y'all. Y'all make sure you guys thumbs up this video. The practices of patriarchy within the household would be the reinforcement of gender roles. Reinforcement, you cook, you clean, you take care of the household, you don't work, etc. Now, I do understand as time has gone on, there has been progress in terms of women being able to have jobs, and also trying to have progress in terms of them being able to have the same pay grade, receive the same pay wage, essentially. You also have, patriarchy also goes through the guise of the state. Now, this is something that we see manifest all the time in terms of legislation, in terms of Roe v. Wade, in terms of legislation, in terms of women getting care, in terms of pregnancy. We see this all the time in terms of government being able to choose when women can and cannot have care, and also in terms of reducing the rights of women and having autonomy over their own bodies. We see this through the guise as well in terms of patriarchy practices through the guise of violence. Would be domestic violence, this idea. We're still here, y'all. Some of this is manifested into reality, but we're still here. These ideas that I'm going to beat you into submission. And that was something that one of my relatives told me, that's what my grandfather was taught. He was taught to go inside of the room and periodically beat my grandmother, because that is what keeps her in line. Now, I do understand we have made progress since those times, but this is still a philosophy that may not show up on a very explicit level, but it may show up in a very subtle level in terms of the attitudes towards feminine beings. We also see how violence is showcased through the practices of patriarchy through human trafficking, human sex trafficking, because we also know women specifically make up most of the population that are sex trafficked. We also see that the practices of patriarchy through the cultural institutions in terms of churches. In terms of churches, feeding. Now, this is where a lot of times, because a lot of times when we have these conversations, a lot of times melanated men like to do, we didn't create the system of patriarchy. Yeah, you're right. This version of patriarchy you guys did not create, but however, you guys reinforced it. We all do, honestly, but you guys reinforce it. And what I mean by that is this: reinforce it in terms of the church. Yes, a lot of black men were not in church, but we also know that there was a issue to where, and this goes back to where it says the section of work and positions. We also know that majority of pastors, people who held leadership positions within the church, were solely men that did nothing but go inside of the pulpits and feed and help indoctrinate their congregation. We also see that the cultural institutions reinforce the ceremony or ritual of marriage. There's a reason why there's a bride walking down the aisle being by her father being given into the hands of another man, aka the groom. Reason that is because women were considered property. And with women being considered property, since the man, aka the father, is the head of the household and he has the final say on everything and he makes the decisions and he has the social equity, I'm handing over my rights to my daughter off to another man, and I'm giving the stamp of approval because I have the final say. That's the reason why they hand the daughters off. We also see, now this is the big one, we also see where the practices of patriarchy is through the attitudes of sexuality. The ideas that of one's femininity. And if you want to actually get into it, a lot of the ideas on femininity are constructed, and I know I might shake the table on this, are constructed by men. These ideas of femininity are constructed by men. Reason why I say that is this. Is because if you, especially in this conversation, if you allow a lot of cis women to speak, especially in terms of the trans conversation, ooh, not my phone going off, but in terms of the trans conversation, they put their womanhood, aka their femininity, on their bodies. They break it down to their bodies. I have a vagina. I have boobs. I have periods. I have this. But we also know that with women's femininity, men use their bodies as a way to showcase femininity. But I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But let me go back to what I was saying over here. Y'all bet you guys thumbs up this video. Oh, come on. Notifications, I live. So, yes, the idea of femininity is constructed by men because it goes based upon your genitalia. Okay, girl, you got a lot of notifications, girl. Come on now. Let me see. There we go. You got a lot of notifications going on. It goes based upon the genitalia. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is this. I'm going to hold off on that because I'm about to bring it back up and I'm going to bring it full circle. You understand what I mean. Now, what I mean by that is this, is that as time goes on, language and information evolves. And when you have more language and information, you're supposed to alter your way of thinking for the most part. I.e., back in the BC days, there were a lot of thought processes that were considered to be outrageous nowadays, because now in current present day we have more scientific, spiritual, mathematical, whatever you want to say, information to now we know for a fact, or we think we know for a fact, what the answer to whatever theory they had back in the day. Now, my example I'm going to use is female, because I said all of that to get to this point, because I'm not going to bring this full circle. Female. Now, I know in this conversation, the word female is being used in these conversations to make a clear distinction between the female cisgender community and transgenderism, non-binary, and etc., because it can get crazy. But what I'm referring to right now, I'm referring to female being used as slang terms that typically men used. Typically. Women use it too, but typically men. So not too long ago, sometime way back, women didn't understand, or it didn't bother women that men refer to women as females whenever they talk to their homeboys or whenever they talk to certain people. But eventually, as time progressed, women got more information and made new observations and understood that typically when women were referred to as females by men, typically it was used in a derogatory way and also used to dehumanize women, because it dwindled you down to your sexual anatomy, which would be your vagina or your breast. So women in response are now using male to counteract what female was for them, so they can, in response, dehumanize men from their humanity and being able to show men how does it feel to be dehumanized and talked down to. So that was the response of the female cisgender community. Now, this is where the issue comes into effect, because now we have trans women entering the conversation of womanhood. Now, all of a sudden, you want to get into the face of trans people, queer people, but specifically trans, non-binary, etc. people, intersex as well, people, and dwindle your womanhood down to your sexual anatomy, which is something that you did not want men to do. And your stance was before is that my womanhood, my womanhood is more than my vagina. My womanhood is more than my breast. But in this trans conversation surrounding womanhood, etc., that's all you want to talk about is your periods, your breasts, and that you carry. And that's a direct contradiction. But here's the gag. That is a direct contradiction, which illustrates or tells me that there is a hypocrisy there. But let me continue. I'm telling you, it's going to be a slow roast. It's going to be a slow. Now, I'm not saying roast as in disrespect. I'm saying slow roast as in I'm going to take my time with this bad boy. We're going to take our time. So let's get into the transphobia breakdown. Here's the thing. Transphobia, because when I said there's a hypocrisy there, what I mean by that is this. There is a transphobia that's present that a lot of people do not want to admit. I think it's because a lot of times, for one, people would never want to associate themselves with something like transphobia, because we all know when it comes down to racism, when it comes down to homophobia, transphobia, when it comes down to misogyny, etc., we recognize and we know the horrible acts, deeds, attitudes that are associated and also connected with those words historically. So for the most part, no one's gonna say no. Like for the most part, no one's gonna say I'm transphobic. Yeah, I am, and own it. That rarely ever happens. But there is a transphobia that does exist. And another reason why I feel like a lot of people do not want to actually admit that is because a lot of times they're trying to compare themselves to the explicit transphobic folk. But you can be emotionally violent, mentally violent, spiritually violent, and showcase transphobia through those tactics. I.e., let's get into it. Here we go. Y'all hold on, y'all hold your horses because it's about to get rocky. What I mean by that is this. Transphobia, of course, trans is talking about transgender people or trans people who don't fall under the guise of the conventional way of showing up in terms of transgender of cis people, transgender people. But then you also have phobia, which has to do with hatred, aversion, fear, etc. And people a lot. One of the rebuttals is always, I don't fear trans people. But if you allow people to speak, you actually do fear trans people, because with that fear, it's an irrational fear, which doesn't make any sense. What you're saying may be transphobic is because the root cause of your talking points are rooted in transphobia to its root, to its core. What you're going to have to do is go down the rabbit hole to find out if it is or if it isn't. And I'm going to use an example. But before I do all of that, I'm going to take you down to another rabbit hole. One of the things that I've noticed is this. I've noticed that there's this within human beings, we have biases. We have biases. We have ways that we think. We have certain things that we think about people. It's just naturally we all have biases. It is what it is. And it's funny that this situation happened because I have this book here. This book here, and it says this: how highly effective people speak. And it says here, how high performers use psychology to influence with ease. To influence with ease. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little breakdown, a small little breakdown of the book. Essentially, what this book talks about is how we naturally have biases. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule, but we all naturally have biases. And the best way to get your point across is not to fight against those biases, but actually identify and work with those biases. And I said all of that to say this. One of the bias that I noticed that was very much present, especially when we get into the conversation surrounding gender identity and sexual orientation, but specifically gender identity for transgender people, non-binary, etc., is called the availability bias. It's called the availability bias. Now let's get to my other set of notes. The availability bias. What is that? Now, before I get into that, I do want to talk about the human thinking, the way that we think, the way that we operate, the way that we view things. Human thinking, you have two different subgroups of human thinking. You have the complex, difficult, cognitively demanding thinking. And then you also have the easy, fast, bias, heuristic thinking, which typically are easy and shortcuts. Now, what I mean by that is this, in terms of a bias. Just because you have a bias is not always bad. Biases are used in our mind to make shortcuts to save energy for our brain to do all the hard thinking. That's the purpose of a bias in our head. In our head. Just so you guys are aware, in our head. But here's the thing. Our minds can be in the realm of the complex, difficult thinking, but typically minds are typically in the realm of the easy, shortcut thinking. It's typically here. Now, let's get into the availability bias. What is that? The availability bias is overweighing or considering evidence we remember or that's available to us. Let's get into it. So What is the availability bias process? So the process will work like this. You will consider a question or concept, then you will have an associative cascade, then you will have an ease of recall, or you will use your brain to be able to see, what do I know about this question and what do I know about this concept inside of your head. This is all inside of your head. This is a thinking process. This is all cognitive. So ease of recall slash, what do I think about? What information can I think in my head or brainstorm in my head that I know about this concept or question? And that's when your memory comes into effect. Then as a result, you would consider or overweigh the available information that's in your skull, within your consciousness. Now, let's do this. How to overcome the availability bias. You will overcome the availability bias by seeking stats instead of relying on ease of recall. Now, what I mean by that is this. Within this book here, it says this. It says that stats give us information. It says this. I'm trying to make sure I word it right. It says stories persuade us, but carry little information. Statistics inform us, but don't persuade us. So to overcome those things, you must seek statistics instead of relying on ease of recall. Now, how to overcome the availability bias process. 1, consider a question or a concept, which would be transgenderism. Then you would seek out statistics and sources surrounding your topic, would be the population of transgenderism. Then you will evaluate the question and concept with the new information that you have on the said subject. Now, let me just reverse it and actually implement the subject inside of the process. Availability bias process. Like I said, it's going to be a slow roast. Consider a question or concept. So one of the talking points that's transphobic, and because it's generated and is said to create fear. And the fear is this: trans women or trans people are going to replace real women. That's the statement. Let's break that down then. Consider a question or concept. How many people identify with being transgender here in America? Or what do I know about transgenderism? The next step would be associative cascade. What do I know about transgender people? And then you begin to think. Then the next step would be easy of recall, or AKA you're using your memory. This is all cognitive. Now, this is where what ish goes wrong, because when you're using your memory, you also have to keep in mind that the media, or AKA public platforms, send out misinformation on transgender people, which are influenced by stereotypes and also half-truths. So now when you're trying to do your ease of recall or trying to remember information that you know on transgender people, you have a lot of misguided information that you're going based off of, and you're trying to come up with the next step, which would be to overweigh available information. So what I mean by that is this: how in the hell are transgender people going to replace quote unquote real women when, if you go to overcome that availability bias, because we understand the media says Transgender people are wicked, they're demonic, they're this, they're that, they a whole bunch of everything. They're trying to replace real women. How the hell are transgender people going to replace quote unquote real women if transgender people that who identify as transgender are 0.001% of the population? They're less than 1% of the population. And if you want to count in or factor in transgender women, it's less than that. And then you want to count in and factor in melanated transgender women. It's less than that. So what you're referring to is a minority within a minority within a minority within a minority within a minority, and you're trying to come up with a theory that this minority within a minority within a minority within a minority within a minority are trying to replace quote unquote cis women when the population doesn't even reflect that. And also what I mean by that, how can you be replaced as a cis woman when your existence of a cis woman, of cis women, have existed since the dawn of time? That's the reason why in your biblical text, it talks about Eve within Adam and Eve. It talks about Mary within Mary and Joseph. Your existence been around. And also, how can one concept replace a different concept? Well, one identity replace another identity when both of those identities have existed since the dawn of time. This is what I mean when I say that a lot of the talking points are rooted in transphobia, because what that's actually doing is generating an irrational fear of a group of people. But let me continue. We can get into it. Y'all bet you guys thumbs up this video, okay? Thumbs up. Let's get into this whole thing. And let's talk about this as well, because this is another factor of it. Trans women are going to replace real women. Here's the thing too. A lot of people don't want to say it. Another thing about it is that another branch in this conversation is that a lot of women are really saying that a trans woman are going to replace their spot next to these dusty ass niggas. That some women are saying, well, they're saying it without saying it. Some cis women are saying it without saying it. That you're also afraid that trans women are going to replace your position next to a man, because we have been socialized. And this is what I mean when I say that patriarchy describes femininity through the patriarchal gaze, which reduces you down to your anatomy and what you can attract. And since we know in the highly patriarchal, toxic patriarchal system that femininity attracts men, for the most part, femininity attracts men, we also know that there are a lot of trans women that assimilate to femininity, especially at hyper levels. Which is why even in, let me see, I want to look up the right terminology. Even in sexuality, you have, what is bad boy at? Androphilia and genophilia. Androphilia, a romantic and or sexual attraction to masculinity. Then you have the genophilia, which is a romantic and or sexual attraction to femininity. So if we know on the sexuality basis that genophilia is a thing, and you have trans women assimilating to the social constructs, these ideas surrounding femininity and how to show up in the world because of their gender, someone's going to be attracted to that. And that's the real conversation we're not having. But I'm gonna continue. This false illusion that what that men are going to protect you. Individually, yes. At times, yes. But in this situation, I thought it was interesting that just hilarious. First thing she said in her mouth, who's going to protect us? But then later on in the situation, DJ Academics showed you that they're not going to protect you, because as soon as Jess Hilarious made her statement and she's going back and forth with T.S. Madison, Angelica Ross, etc., he decides to release a tweet saying that this whole time he thought that Jess Hilarious was transgender. And the funny thing was, and the gag of it is that no one checked him. No one came in defense of Jess Hilarious except for Miss Tasha K. And the thing about it is that the only reason why she did that is because she has an issue with transgender people. That's essentially what it is. Because she was literally just dragging the shit out of Jess Hilarious not too long ago. Not too long ago, like a week ago. And also, you have to keep in mind, I also want to consider the source in terms of Tasha K and her defending Jess Hilarious and why it's BS. But hold up on that for 2.5 seconds. And I also thought it was very interesting too that in terms of Jess Hilarious, she gave backlash for the transgender people. There was backlash for the transgender people, the trans TikToker. Cool. But there was no backlash for the rapper, and she protected the identity of the rapper that thought she was transgender. There was no backlash then. But I digress. Let's continue. So it's something that my teacher has always told me in high school. It was something along the lines of, whenever people bother you and you seem to be in a very hard situation, she always said this, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life. Consider the source. So that's what we're about to do. Let's get into Miss Tasha K. So now we're about to consider the source of the people that quote unquote came in defense and to stand with Jess Hilarious. Let's talk about Tasha K. Tasha K is an agent of chaos. Tasha K is a person that weaponizes social sensitivities, aka she understands the social dynamics within society and knows the environment to understand the sensitivities which would make people operate under emotional or operate under and give trauma responses. And what I mean by that is this. This is also the same woman that decided to use sexual assault allegations. If you pay attention to most of her enemies, she understands her audience demographic, and her audience demographic, for the most part, are women of color. And we know that women of color are largely sexually assaulted and also underreported because they believe that a lot of times they will not be believed. So this is what Tasha K does, because she likes to weaponize sexual assault in terms as a way to activate the MK Ultra within the hearts of melanated women who have actually gone through those things, as a way to use them as pawns on a chessboard to do her dirty work and to attack people. She uses dog whistles and also has undertones when she speaks. She likes to weaponize black women or black women whenever she says it. You're going to attack a black woman? You're going to disrespect a black woman? But keep in mind, this is also the same black woman that disrespects other black women, aka when it came down to T.S. Madison, she disrespected another cis black woman, which would be T.S. Madison's mother, that did nothing to Tasha K. This is also the same woman that likes to utilize black women and weaponize the sensitivities of black women. i.e. the situation where she had with Malibu Dollface, where she was arguing with Lovely T and Malibu Dollface, and she accused Malibu Dollface of calling her a black bee because she understands that colorism is a social dynamic and a social sensitivity that does exist, especially for dark-skinned black women, where Malibu Dollface never called her a black bee. He just called her a bitch because they were arguing back and forth. This is also the same woman that likes to weaponize personal, vulnerable information on others that she deemed to be close with, have a relationship to, either business, intimate, etc., and likes to weaponize those things on the forefront. This is also the same woman who decided to text Larry Reed when he was going through his situation with the accuser that was accusing him of doing inappropriate things with him. She reinforced and agreed that Larry Reed in text messages should sue the accuser because the only thing you have to your life is your name, and you should protect it at all costs. And then guess what happened? When she fell out with Larry Reed, that's exactly what she went after. This is also the same woman who got into a business relationship partnership with Tony the Closer, to where when they were building up their relationship, their business relationship, he shared with her how he's protective over his wife, fiance, partner, his spouse. I don't really know what their status is. I want to say she's fiance, probably girlfriend. I don't know. How he's protective over her because she has a business where she sells clothes and merchandise, and she models her own clothes, and he does not want her to feel insecure about her body because she doesn't have, quote unquote, that skinny model figure. She's the thicker woman, and he did not want her to feel insecure. And guess what happened when she decides to jump out the window on Tony the Closer? She went straight after his girlfriend or his spouse, his partner. That's the first thing she went after because she knew what she was doing. Let's not forget, this is the same woman that when she went at T.S. Madison, she purposely went after T.S. Madison's mother. And we know, especially if you follow T.S. Madison, you know that is a trigger for T.S. Madison because we know that's what Kaya did in their dispute. And that's what triggered Maddie off. Because Maddie didn't answer for a long time. So she knew what she was doing. But let's also consider the source as well. Now we're going to move from one agent of chaos, and we're going to move to the other agent of chaos, and let's get into this queer mammy, aka Flame Monroe. Flame Monroe is also an agent of chaos, and also she has that pick-me behavior. But I will say this, in terms of Tasha K and Flame Monroe, both people are agents of chaos, but there is a distinction between the two. I would say this, with Tasha K, I feel like anybody can get it. Anybody can get it. She gonna give anybody that work in terms of being able to cause chaos. In terms of, in comparison to, I'm about to say Storm Monroe, in comparison to Flame Monroe, she only wants to be an agent of chaos in terms of her own community, aka transgender people in the queer community. That's the only time she would ever be an agent of chaos, because she has that pick-me behavior syndrome. Flame Monroe also is the same person that does nothing but have dog whistles and undertones. Whenever Flame Monroe goes to speak, she talks about an agenda. If that's the case, if there's an agenda, then you're part of that agenda. Would you or would you not? The manifestation of your life is part of that agenda. And because I know that Flame Monroe is a clout chasing money grubber that would do anything for opportunity, a check. If that's the case, if this is an agenda, they should no longer allow Flame Monroe, who's also part of the queer community, to ever be part of any type of mainstream media. But we also know if we allow you to tell it, your representation, your life does not represent an agenda. And when she uses the word force in different interviews and also talking points, she knows what Flame knows what she's doing in terms of being able to speak that language that the dominant society is speaking, in terms of in when it comes to opposing transgender people and non-binary people, etc., intersex people, etc. She knows what language to speak. That's the reason why the dominant society loves her on a conscious or subconscious level. And what I mean by that, in terms of the undertones and also dog whistle, when it comes down to misgendering. Now, I do understand within the community, when the girls be reading back and forth within the community, they do misgender each other. You just this, you just that. You know, they go to hold your 9 yards when they read each other. But the thing with Miss Flame Monroe is that in terms of Hope Giselle and Angelica Ross, it's just that it hits different because we know your psychology is pick-me behavior. We know your psychology is self-hate. We know your psychology is that you want to know the information, you want to learn the information, but you're so insecure on your own mental capacity that you would rather talk down upon those who actually understand the concepts of transgenderism to its full capacity, understand the concepts surrounding non-binary people and intersex people, and have the language and the education and grasp the education. Not only that, teach the education to other people, and actually have the willpower to go against a toxic cream mayonnaise, cream supremacy system and fight against it. This is also the same person that turns a blind eye and move the goalpost in terms of conversations. My example of that would be this. When Hope Giselle, T.S. Madison, Ashley Presley, and Flame Monroe were on IG Live, and there was a situation to where Flame Monroe was giving out her POV, her point of view, her perspective, her perception on trans issues and the way that trans people operate and act. One of the things that she said was this, is that for one, the root of Flame Monroe's talking points is self-hate, and also the root of it is rooted in respectability politics. What I mean by that is this. One of the things that Flame Monroe said is that we have to send some calm, level-headed transgender people to have these conversations, etc. Now, don't get me wrong. There is a time and a place for probably those type of conversations, but those are not the main conversation. We don't push those conversations solely in the forefront, because we also know that when you have a narcissistic system that's objective is to dominate, it doesn't matter how you show up. It's going to push you around and throw you off to the side. Because we also have an example to where, because Flame directed her point subtly at Hope Giselle in the beginning, because she's felt like Hope Giselle is so aggressive when she speaks. And keep in mind, the colorism does play a part as well, because Giselle is a melanated, dark-skinned, melanated trans woman. So the colorism does play a part. Said that Hope Giselle, who's a black trans activist, was very aggressive and yada yada, and you have to go in there calm and have a conversation, etc. And the thing about it is that there was an example to where they had very calm, cool, collected black melanated trans women on the Breakfast Club talking about transgenderism, talking about the queer community, educating people, but was still disrespected. Let's have that example of Janet Mock, how she was on the Breakfast Club and she had her interview, and less than 24 hours later, they had Little Duval disrespect that transgender woman. So initially, Flame Monroe's stance and position was we must have some calm people to go up and speak about our issues, etc. But then once Hope Giselle and Ashley Presley reminded Hope of how the Breakfast Club treated Janet Mock, all of a sudden her position went from we need calm, collected, cool trans people to go to speak, and then it mutated into Janet Mock knew what she was going into. Janet Mock knew that, knew what was going to happen. So which one is it? Consider the source. These are the people that are quote unquote coming in defense of Just Hilarious. And to be completely honest, both of those people are not doing it because they want to come in defense of Just Hilarious. Keep in mind, Tasha K would do anything for her name to be out there. Tasha K would do anything to be to go at it with another big giant content creator, i.e., which is the reason why she goes at it with big content creator, because that's another tactic to keep her name relevant in the social media streets, i.e. Cardi B, i.e. Larry Reid, i.e. T.S. Madison, i.e. Tony the Closer, i.e. Conscious TV, i.e. King Pay. Like, this is what she does, i.e. Armand Wiggins. Is another tactic to keep her name in the streets, because publicity is publicity. Good publicity is good, bad publicity is good. But as long as your name is out there, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And also keep in mind, Flame Monroe is also a money-hungry, clout-chasing queer mammy that sits on the front lines to windmill on behalf of straight, heterosexual, transphobic, queerphobic people, and then get on the forefront to make claims. And then once she gets chin-checked by the queer community for saying ignorant things out of, once Flame gets chin-checked for saying ignorant things out of his mouth, because the pronouns are he, she, we, for saying ignorant things out of her mouth, all of a sudden it's, oh, I'm not an advocate, I'm not a representation. Then you need to shut the up if that's the case. Then you need to worry about your comedy. That's all you need to worry about. But like I said, clout chasing and wants every opportunity to make money, because guess what? One of the things that Flame Monroe said in that live as well is that I know what I'm doing. And Flame Monroe said this himself. I know what I'm doing. The straight community is not using me. I know what I'm doing. Bing, 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 bing. You're doing it for money. Get your ass. And these are the people that quote unquote come in defense of Just Hilarious, not because they want to, but just because they both of them see an opportunity. They're opportunistic. Cloud chasing. Flame Monroe, the same person that did an interview with Rizza Islam, speaking that fear-mongering language, and also talked out of both sides of her neck or his neck. You also the same person that did multiple Breakfast Club interviews, where outside of those interviews, you said you weren't an advocate. You said that you didn't have the information, or you shouldn't be the one speaking, but yet you seem to always be the one with your mouth open and speaking. It doesn't make any sense. You're also the same person that linked up with a person who was almost convicted of, I don't want to say the P word, because they had their son and his nephews hook up with a prostitute, aka Lil Boosie. He also, of course, linked up with Tasha K. That says it all. That's proof in the pudding. Once again, consider the source. So let me move on, because I spent a little bit of time doing that. Let me say this. The real issue is people don't want to be inclusive, either on a conscious or unconscious level. People do not want to be inclusive. I don't care what people say, what their concerns are. I don't care what people say when it comes down to their feelings or how they think. It doesn't matter. I need for people to understand it. It does not matter how many times you go to break this information down, this education down to the most simplest level. On a conscious or subconscious level, people do not want to be inclusive. The prefix cis is to affirm your existence. It's to affirm and validate your experiences as a cis woman that trans women will never fully understand, ever. They can sympathize, but they can't empathize. Sympathy is more of the I feel for you. Damn, that's messed up. Empathy is the I've been there before, so I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly how you feel because I've been there too. It happened to me too. It's used as a way to validate your experiences, not dismiss them. But I'm gonna tell you what the subconscious is reading when a lot of people speak. The people that view or try to brand cis, the prefix cis, CIS, as a slur. I'm gonna tell you the reason why they're thinking it's a slur. Because for one, whether people want to admit it or not, especially those people who may not be physically violent to transgender people or queer people, but specifically to stay on task, transgender, non-binary people, they use different prefixes like trans as a slur in their undertones and also as dog whistles. They use it as a slur. So after this whole time within the culture of me using, or the culture using trans as a slur, and we have all these words that we use them as slurs, and we use them on a conscious or subconscious level to demean a person. Now, when we have transgender people or queer people coming up with a term, this has to be their get back. Because we disrespected you for so long, so you must really want to get one in on us. This has to be the reason why you want to call us cis, because we disrespect you so much. So this has to be like a slur. This has to be it. That's what that subconscious is reading in those talking points. But let me continue. The issue is, people don't want to admit it. The issue is that the reason why there's so much resistance and there's always a rebuttal, there's always a but and or a but comma or comma but whatever, is because the information is supposed to include queer people, transgender people. The information is supposed to include a group of people that's not supposed to be, a group of people. That's really what it is. And the reason why how I know that is because there's so much resistance for terminology that's used as ways to endure, like to affirm and validate cis women's fish and also like cis. But the reason how I know that there is a hypocrisy and there's a double standard in terms of the resistance and acceptance of terminology that's used to affirm your existence and also be inclusive to a group of people that you claim you're inclusive of in terms of your language, in terms of the way that you operate, in terms of the way that you view them, is because there's a whole sector for scientists to come up with scientific terminology, but there's never any Okay, I'm back. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys see me? What's going on with you? See, things are going good. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? I think you can, but y'all let me know if y'all can see me, y'all can hear me. Because as soon as things were getting good, I can hear. Okay, so I'm gonna do it like this. It's like every single time things be going good, all of a sudden things want to go out, but it's all right. I'm gonna finish this video. I'm gonna finish it. So I'm gonna do it like this. I forgot where I was. It was getting good. Oh, let me pick up my phone now. Y'all make sure you guys thumbs up this video. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Thumbing up really does help out with YouTube's algorithm. Please make sure you guys thumbs up. All right, y'all make sure. Please make sure. And please make sure you subscribe, because when you subscribe, it does help out. You do become a logician, and also when you thumbs up, it helps out with the YouTube's algorithm, so YouTube can finally do their job out there. So when we do our job in here, YouTube can finally do their job out there. And when they finally do their job out there, they can recommend the video and get more people in here. Okay, gotcha. All right, so let me continue. Let me continue. So where was I? Let me see. Yes. So in terms of how I know there is a double standard and there is a resistance in terms of resisting terminology, is because there's a whole scientific industry to where they do nothing but come up with scientific terminology that's never refuted, never rebutted by the dominant society in terms of the citizens and the audience. Now, on boards and stuff, they probably debate those things. But when it comes down to the general public, they don't debate those things. And also, if you even want to take it a step further, let's take it a step further. Let's also talk about how there's slang terminology that's used throughout the culture that's never refuted. Let's talk about how the different ways that we use different terminology to refer to our genitalia, like PUSSY. What about vagina? What about coochie? What about kitty? What about cat? What about DICK? What about penis? What about COCK? What about schlong? All these different terminologies that are used, presented through the culture, either on a professional level, or these things are used and introduced through a cultural level, a social level, but they're never refuted or dismissed. That's how I know that there is a bias there that people do not want to admit. And also, let's also speak to the people that love to say this. It's too much to learn. I just think that's very interesting, because I'm going to keep my foot on people who say that, because it's very interesting. Because let's be very clear. If we're going to talk about cis women, just for conversation purposes, we're going to talk about cis women, especially if we're having a melanated context, melanated cis women. We also know that cis women are the most educated. And with you being the most educated, last time I checked, it wasn't so much for you to learn, to study, to understand the information in order for you to have degrees. And then but let's actually go past, let's actually go past the degrees and push the envelope even further. Let's not forget that there are melanated men who have degrees as well. But let's push it past the actually getting the degree, because we also know and we also understand that experience is the best teacher. So once you actually have the degree for said career or pathway, we also know that there's stuff that you're going to learn in the books, but we also know there's stuff that you're going to learn once you're actually out in the field, whatever field or genre or section or sector that may be. So to be completely honest, you're always learning, especially when you first get in there. You're always learning. Doctors are always learning about new diseases and new infections and viruses that's happening. Let's not forget, coronavirus that doctors had and nurses had to learn about. Let's not forget Ebola that happened not too long ago, some years back, that doctors had to learn about. Let's not forget there are people who go to job orientation to learn about the new positions at their employment. But let's just break the fifth wall. Let's not forget that people are parents. And a lot of people said that parenting is hard and it doesn't come with a manual, but you learned how to get through it, and you learned how to do it the best of your ability. So this whole idea and this notion that, oh, it's just too much to learn, that's really because you don't want to learn it. Because any degree, for the most part, any degree that you have or you pick in college, you're going to take a lot of essays. You're going to do a lot of essays, a lot of reading to be able to obtain that degree. But guess what? You wanted that degree and you wanted to learn about that degree. Wanted to learn about that field to obtain that degree. So this notion that it's too much to learn, what that really means is that I don't want to learn it. And I need for people to start being honest about it, honestly. But I'm just going to get to my last couple things and I'm going to end this video. Here's the thing. What's really going on the macro level is that it's this. Make sure I put my banner up as well, y'all. Y'all make sure I put my banner up as well. I know that's pretty. Come on, y'all. Y'all make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. But what's really going on a macro level is that people are, and when I say people, we, us as a people, we're passing down trauma and reinforcing trauma throughout the culture. What I mean by that is this: reinforcing trauma, and which also what I like to call the bully effect. This is when you have different oppressive systems at work to be able to put people in a hierarchical structure. The most powerful, or the people who hold the power, at the top, the people with the least amount of power at the bottom. And this is in a pyramid structure to where the most people are going to be at the bottom. And that's when it goes back to that distributive curve where the most of the population is going to be in that center. So now you have us reinforcing trauma, aka that was put on us from racism, aka cream supremacy, which acts as a way to keep Caucasoid people at the top, melanated people at the bottom, as a way to make sure that their power structure reinforces and solidifies their position within society, and have the political social equity. Now, even though you may have Caucasoid people at the top, but they all can't be at the top. You also have to organize and arrange them as well to make sure that they're in their right positions as well. So you have Caucasoid men and Caucasoid women, both cisgendered. And in order to keep them in line and put them in position, you're going to use the system of patriarchy to make sure that Caucasoid cis men are at the top and Caucasoid cis women are at the bottom, which are, of course, like I read earlier, are reinforced by religion, cultural institutions, that's reinforced through the state, reinforced through the political perspective aspect, that's reinforced through the psychology. But also with Caucasoid men being at the top, they all can't be at the top. You also have to arrange them as well. And this is where classism, the system of classism, comes into effect. to where your social class dictates how high up on the pyramid you are. So now when you have rich white men at the tippity top, but you have poor or least fortunate Caucasoid men still at the top, but they're on the lower spectrum of the section of where Caucasoid men are in. And then you have Caucasoid women. But right below them, you have Caucasoid queer people. But the reason why they weren't a part of the cis men and cis women is because of queerphobia that's used and actually that's used throughout the same way patriarchy is, because they don't fit the norm. But then within the queer community, because keep in mind, racism still is a thing. So we're not even talking about melanated queer people. But even within the Caucasoid queer community, you have the gay, lesbian, bisexual people at the top, and then you have the Caucasoid, trans, non-binary, intersex people, drag queens, etc. at the bottom, because of transphobia that does exist. But it doesn't only stop there. Now what I'm going to get into is talking about the mirror effect. What I like to call the mirror effect. The mirror effect for me personally is something I came up with. I don't know if this is actually a real thing. It probably is. The mirror effect for me is a side effect of colonization and abuse. And this is what I literally call the bully effect. The bully effect is when you see white men doing to white women doing to white queer people doing it to white gay, lesbian, bisexual people doing it to white trans people, etc. If there's a trickle down effect. Now, the mirror effect is when you see melanated communities that have been colonized mirroring the same exact formula. So where you have melanated men who aren't on the same level socially and economically as Caucasoid men because of the system of cream supremacy. So now you have melanated men because of Black patriarchy that was adopted and making sure that melanated men stay on the top, melanated women stay at the bottom. Remember, they're both cis. But because of queerphobia, queer people were not allowed to be on quote unquote on those levels. They weren't allowed to be quote unquote on the same level. And so now you have melanated gay, lesbian, bisexual people at the top, and melanated trans, intersex, and non-binary, etc. at the bottom because of transphobia. It's literally a trickle-down effect. That's the reason why we're having these conversations. It's because we're literally inside of a matrix that's creating all of this tension and all of this in-house and all of this in-house fighting. That's literally what it is. In-house fighting. But let me continue. Now, in terms of, there's another concept I want to go over. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've talked about this. Let me see. I think I got this bad boy up. Let me see what this bad boy at. I think I got it here. Is it here? Yes, it is. Bam. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Where you have this, it's a pyramid, of course. Hold up real quick, y'all. Let me get it real quick. Yep. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid of the needs that motivate people in so many words. Now, keep in mind, I'm not referring to the exception, but I'm referring to the rule. I want to make that clear. I'm not referring to the exception. I'm talking about the rule. There's 6 levels or tiers. You have the sociological, which consists of air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and sex. You have the safety, which is the personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. You have the love and belonging, which includes friendships, family, intimacy, sense of connection. You have the esteem, which consists of respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. You have the self-actualize. You have the knowledge and understanding. You have the aesthetic and beauty. You have the self-actualization, which essentially is the desire to become the most of one can be, which is reach your full potential. And then at the tip top, you have transcendence, which is the highest level of human consciousness, basically operating in your higher self. Reason why I brought this up, because all of this plays a part to why everybody's doing all of this in-house fighting, which is the deflection, which is the tactic. So now you have people who are on the sociological level. Now at the bottom, which of course will make up the biggest portion of the population, especially if we're living under a capitalistic, patriarchal cream supremacy, where this is the reason why people at the bottom are typically have more kids. They're more on the aspect of EBT and WIC. They may indulge in stores like Goodwill, or more than likely have hand-me-downs, and more than likely have rent. Because when you're living in a matrix that's restricting others from being able to progress in society, it forces people to live in their lower nature. To live in their lower nature. So a lot of people aren't really going to be thinking about, quote unquote, looking at these perspectives, or looking at these issues, or looking at these conversations from their higher self when rent is due. When I got no food in the refrigerator. I have no food on the stove. All of these things play a part on the large scheme of things. But it was something else, because I was actually listening to oh crap, I almost dropped my stuff. I was actually listening to Laverne Cox, her rebuttal on this situation, whatever. And I also heard Claudia Jordan and Funky Dineva stuff. And let me say this about the whole Claudia Jordan, Funky Dineva stuff, because I low-key have forgot about them. To be honest with you, I'm gonna say it like this: I don't know why people keep trying to remind transgender people that they were born male or born female. They understand that. They know that, because guess what? That's the reason why the prefix trans is in their identity. They're already acknowledged, and this is what I mean when I say that these prefixes validate and acknowledge your experiences. So you're telling them something that they already know. But when I was listening to Laverne Cox, she said a word that struck me, because it struck me, and because I've looked into this concept some time back, but when she said the word, it struck me, and it reminded me of the concept back then. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull it up. Bam. She said Geno. Now I'm not gonna repeat everything, so girl, because you know YouTube and all this other stuff. Geno. There's 10 stages of Geno. I'm for purposes of YouTube, I'm gonna say GC. So actually, I like this one better. I'm not gonna lie. I like this one better. So the first one, the first stage of GC is classification. This is where you are divided into a us versus them. This is when people are divided from an us to a them. Then the next stage will be symbolism, symbolization. It says people are forced to identify themselves. Now keep in mind, there's a distinction between identifying yourself before you. There's a distinction between you identifying yourself, and there's a distinction between you being forced to identify yourself. But symbolization, people are forced to identify themselves. Doesn't that sound familiar? When people have an issue with trans people using certain restrooms and they actually want trans people to use their own restrooms, something completely separate, with, and let's just call a spade, some people only want trans people to identify themselves as trans and also use the quote unquote trans bathroom, because they want trans people to put an X on their back, and they know how, so they can be sure and know how to attack and disrespect transgender people. You see, YouTube just don't be doing what they need to be doing, but it's all right. What's going on, Arshawn? Catch the playback. But okay, so the third stage of GC would be discrimination. It says people begin to face systematic discrimination, and we actually see that through many minority groups. We see that when it comes down to women, when it comes down to Roe v. Wade. We see that in terms of melanated people when it comes down to the affirmative action being reversed. We see that it comes down to transgender people being not really having the option or the support or resources in terms of healthcare. We already see the manifestations of these things. But then we also have the fourth one, which I thought was very interesting. It says dehumanization. People are equated with animals, vermin, or diseases. Fourth stage, dehumanization. People equated to animals, vermin, or diseases. Now, I think that's very interesting because that's literally littered in all of the language. The reason why melanated people were easily disrespected is because they were dehumanized. Referring to women back in the day and referring to them as female and used in a cultural sense was a way to dehumanize women of their identity, of their humanity, of their emotional state, and being able to refer them and dehumanize them to their sexual anatomy. The exact same thing by calling men males. Same thing when you call when melanated people in America were called were deemed as property. Same thing when women were deemed as property. When transgender people are called its, which means not human, you're it. It's all a way to dehumanize and makes it easy for the psyche to be able to disregard human beings and don't think twice about it. Because I say this all the time. Dehumanizing somebody is an easy way to be able to soothe your mind with the BS you're about to do. And the reason why I say that is this. historically, we understand. I'm going to use racism because that seems to be one of the things that melanated people, for the most part, understand. For the most part, they understand it. We get it. It's easy to detect for melanated people of all walks of life, for the most part. When it came down to melanated people being locked up in chains, of being indentured servants, being slaves, etc., it was easy for Caucasoid America, cream supremacy, to disrespect and disregard the feelings, emotions, experiences of melanated people here in America because we were deemed as property. And what's the psychology of when it comes down to people and their property? When you are property, you do not have any feelings, you don't have any emotions, you are just here to serve. And I am the, and you also have an owner, and with you having an owner, the owner decides what happens to you. Because I use this example all the time. When you have property, say for instance, I have my cell phone here, and with me having my cell phone, everybody knows I have my cell phone. Everybody knows my cell phone is my cell phone. Everybody else has their own cell phone. But when I decide to just get up out of nowhere, throw my cell phone against the wall and break my cell phone, people are going to look at me crazy like, wow, why would you do that? But at the same time, they're not really going to care because it's property. And that's the psychology of dehumanizing a person. That's the psychology, which is very dangerous. But then let's get to the fifth step, or the fifth stage of GC. It says the government creates special groups to enforce these policies. Now it says the government, but it enforces, the powers that be create special groups to enforce said policies. In terms of, why do we think the way that we do? Remember what I said earlier when it came down to me having that patriarchy and the way that it works and the breakdown. Not only was the state reinforcing the BS, churches were reinforcing the BS, because churches are also a place that highly influence people, highly influential, especially in melanated communities. But let's continue. 6. The sixth stage would be polarization. The powers that be broadcast propaganda to turn the population against the group. That's exactly what happens. And that's why I decided to do a whole segment earlier on the availability recall, the availability bias. Because you literally have the powers that be sending out misinformation on groups of people into the frequencies, the consciousness, the algorithm, mental algorithm of people, to now, when you have situations regarding those said group of people, the marginalized group of people, now you have people who did not do the proper research on said group of people to refute the misconceptions that were given on the airwaves of mainstream media. Now you have people operating off of stereotypes and misguided information. And that's the reason why I decided to do the availability recall. The availability bias, and talk about it, the process and everything. Because that's exactly what's going on here. But now we have stage 7, preparation. The official action to remove/relocate people begins. Now, doesn't that sound familiar, where melanated people were removed and relocated to the ghettos? Because here's the thing. Because it also says here as well, too. Let me see, can I find that one? Where that bad boy at? Where that bad boy at? Where that bad boy at? Let me see, can I find it? Where that bad boy at? Perpetrators plan the GC. They often use, oh girl. No, it's not that one. Let me see, can I find the other one? Because it was this one. Where is it? There we go. Separating victims because of ethnic or religious identity, death lists are drawn up, property is expirated. Makes it easy for people to discriminate when all of you guys are in one area. That's the reason why most melanated people, for the most part, are in the ghettos. Because with the ghettos, they're not properly funded. The knowledge is not always there or always circulating in terms of how to in terms of how to elevate. And also, if there is a psychology you do have to break when you do live in the ghettos, which is the reason why I talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People aren't going to reach their higher self or operate in their higher self when they're worrying about their rent or worrying about their children or worrying about their own safety. That's the reason why I brought all of that up. But let me continue. The eighth stage is persecution. This is when the beginning of unaliving people starts to happen, and all of these massacres and etc. starts to happen. Then you have stage 9, extermination. This is a wholesale elimination of the group. It is an extermination and not unaliving because the people are not considered to be human. And that's where that dehumanization comes into effect, and why the dehumanization is very dangerous, because it soothes the perpetrator's mind in being able to do the horrific stuff that they're going to be doing. That's the reason why. And then the last stage is denial. The powers that be denies that the crimes were ever committed. Doesn't that sound familiar, melanated people? I.e., what Florida's doing right now, saying that slavery was a good thing because it taught slaves valuable skills. Is that not what's happening when it came down to transgender people and queer people and their contributions to society? Is that not what's going on when it comes down to cis women and their contributions to society? Is that not what's going on? So this is the reason why it irks me that I like that we're having a conversation, but I don't like it that it's kind of like we are fighting. Because I have sat back and watched. It's like we're fighting. And I don't like that. So I do believe that we do need to stay on task, and we need to understand that we are not each other's enemy. We're not. Because we are too busy fighting each other instead of those in power, which is a chess move. That's the reason why when the queen, you always want to protect your queen on the chessboard, because the pawns are used as distractors in war. You're too busy fighting with the pawn that you can't even get to the queen. While the queen goes and does the BS. The powers that be goes and does the BS. I.e., while we're sitting up here fighting and talking about cis and fighting each other, arguing with each other, about to so some people damn near pull up on each other, they reversed affirmative action. The Florida new Black history curriculum that tells the new quote unquote perspective, saying that slavery was a beneficial thing because it taught melanated people valuable skills. The reversal of Roe v. Wade, how the stigmas were pertaining to queer people in terms of, like I said earlier, even when it came down to the fourth stage, I want to say the fourth stage in GC, the dehumanization. When you equate people to animals, vernum, which are, by the way, vernum, I'm probably butchering the word, is animals, wild animals that typically have diseases. And so you have queer people with the stigma, who are human beings with the stigma of automatically having house in Virginia or apartment in Dallas. I'm going to let y'all figure what those two things are. And so they're not allowed to give blood. Queer people have struggles being able to adopt, especially the children that were slam dunk into the foster care system. And also for queer, gender people, transgender people and stuff, having gender affirming care is being reversed. So while we sit up here fighting about who's who, what's what, and what's this and what's that, they're literally taking everybody's rights. And the thing about it is that a lot of people are laughing, talking about some, yes, like they're laughing in terms of laughing at cis women, because they feel cis women are looking dumb in the face. Because I've seen a couple of content creators talking about saying, look at y'all over here giving these transgender people their rights. Now look at it, they're over here turning on you. Not realizing that we're not each other's real enemy. And then not only that, let's be very clear. If they go and take queer people's rights, your black rights as a cis man or cis woman, that's coming next. So we really need to love each other and understand each other. And that's really all I have to say about it. But that is it for my commentary video for today, guys. Please make sure you guys pop that like button, hit the subscribe button, and please, please, please smack that notification bell so do not miss any more posts from me. Till next time, guys, I will see you guys later. Deuces. Bye.